What are modes? Modes are often described as being scales within scales. But what does that mean? Well, hopefully this little presentation will clear a few things up. So first, let's look at the notes of the C major scale on one string. The guitar neck diagram above shows all the notes of the C major scale on the B string of the guitar. In other words, it shows every note in the key of C major on that string. The notes of the C major scale and all the notes in the key of C major are exactly the same. There are 7 notes in the C major scale, and each one of these notes can represent a different mode. So that means that there are 7 modes that you can get from this scale. And if you're looking at the diagram thinking, well, there's more than 7 notes on that string, that's because the diagram shows every position where these notes appear on the B string. You could repeat these notes as high or as low as the fretboard will allow, which is why there's 2 of each note on this string. The marker above the fretboard outlines the notes of the C major scale from C to C. This is what we'd call C Ionian mode. We could actually call this group of notes the C major scale or C Ionian mode. So if I refer to it as either one of those names during the lesson, just understand that they're both the same thing. The next set of notes beneath that marker are all the notes of the C major scale, but this time from D to D. We'd call this D Dorian mode, or you could call it the D Dorian scale. Hopefully now you have a very basic understanding of what modes are. They're like scales within a scale, and each mode will have a different start and end point. So let's look at the other modes within this scale. The next mode is E Phrygian, which is the same notes again but from E to E. And then F Lydian, which is the same notes again but from F to F. G Mixolydian, which is the same notes again but from G to G. A Aeolian, or you could just call this A minor, or A natural minor, which is the same notes again but from A to A. And then B Locrian, which is the same notes again but from B to B. Now, you don't have to find these modes on one string. As long as you can play the same notes on the guitar neck, you can find the modes that come from C major in lots of different places. You could play the C major scale like this. And then you could start on the second note in the scale, which is a D note, and finish on a D note as well, which would give you the second mode that comes from C major, which is D Dorian. You could do this with any major scale, and the modes will always be in the same order. The question a lot of my students have at this point is, well, if each mode uses the exact same notes as the major scale, why can't I just learn the major scale and ignore all the modes? And the answer to that is because each mode has a different tonal center, and that gives the mode a particular sound. Changing the tonal center can give melodies a different feel. I can demonstrate this by playing a melody and altering the tonal center. So, listen to this normal version of Twinkle Twinkle Little Star. And now listen to this version of Twinkle Twinkle Little Star. The first version had a C major tonality, meaning that the music was centered around a C note. All the harmonies resolved to C, giving the piece a sense of rest or completion when returning to that note. The second version had an A minor tonality, with the underlying notes resolving to the tonal center of A or A minor instead. The lowest note in a chord or harmony strongly influences the tonal center. However, the notes of the Twinkle Twinkle Little Star melody have stayed the same. Only the lower notes underneath have changed. There's a lot of different ways that you could view modes. You could think of them as just a way of explaining what the tonal center is in a key. It's not just about the notes or chords that you play, but where those notes or chords start or end up. So although the modes that I showed you before all have the same notes, they have different tonal centers. Here's a diagram that demonstrates that. So on the left, we've got the parent scale, which is C major, and then in the middle we have each mode that comes from C major, and then on the right you have the tonal center of those modes. What I'd like to do next is play you all the modes that come from the C major scale. They're the ones that we looked at before, so C Ionian, D Dorian, E Phrygian, and so on. These are called relative modes. And then I'd like to show you all the modes from the same root note. So that would be C Ionian, C Dorian, C Phrygian, and so on. These are called parallel modes. I'll include tabs and chord boxes so you can see what I'm playing. You'll hear a basic chord that's associated with each mode, which could be minor, major, or diminished. I'll play each mode over 2 octaves, I'll show you which notes are in that mode, and at the end of the video I'll show you some more interesting examples. If you want to actually play these modes, pause the video because I'm going to go through these pretty quick. Let's start with C Ionian mode. All I'm doing to figure out these modes is finding these notes on the guitar neck and playing them in that order over 2 octaves. So C, D, E, F, G, A, B, C, D, E, F, G, A, B, and then C at the end. There's lots of ways to play these modes, I'm just giving you one example of each. Now let's look at the parallel modes. Certain modes are often associated with specific genres of music. Ionian mode is often associated with pop or classical music. Dorian mode is sometimes associated with jazz, blues, and Latin American music. And every other mode has its own type of feeling. In this video, I really only talked about the modes that come from the C major scale and the parallel modes with the tonal center of C. In total, there's roughly 12 major scales, and each major scale has 7 modes. There's a lot more things I could talk about that I couldn't fit in this video, but in your own time you could learn about how to move the modes around the fretboard, why some modes have a major, minor, or diminished tonality, the chords in each mode, the individual formulas of each mode, and how to use the modes as positions on the neck of the guitar. For now, you could just pick a random mode, maybe one from this video like D Dorian, and practice playing it with a backing track in the key of D Dorian, or practice improvising using the same notes. You can find these backing tracks on YouTube, and then you can figure out how to play that mode in different positions all over the neck. You could also try it from a different root note, so instead of playing D Dorian, you could try F Dorian instead. Hopefully after watching this video, you at least have a basic understanding of what modes are. If you have any questions, ask me in the comments and I'll try and answer them or put them in my next video. I also teach guitar online, so if you'd like one-to-one lessons, then send me an email. I'll leave the details in the video description if I have any spaces. So yeah, thanks for watching.